classes. You learn reading and writing, arithmetic, science. You learn a lot of different things, right? And at the end of it, you learn what's on the test, you memorize it, you take the test, you forget about it. You complain that you were never going to use this sometime in our future, so why do I have to learn it now? All those things start to happen, but when how we do education now is a little different than how it was done in the first century. In Israel, the Jews, they went to synagogue and they learned through a rabbi. And what they did, the first 7, 8 years of their life is they memorized the first 5 books of the Bible. That was their education: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And if any of you have read Leviticus, that's some rough stuff to memorize. But that was their education. And then when they were 12, 13 years old, they would end up leaving school, and they'd go back to home, and they would either apprentice at home, learn whatever the family was their farm, whatever trade they were in. Some of the best and the brightest would go on to the next level of education, where they learned the rest of the Old Testament. And then after that, they would graduate, end school, get married, start a life, apply a trade, and then they would move on. But the ones out of there that really, really wanted to become a rabbi, they chose a path of finding a rabbi and learning under them. And this is what a disciple was. And so, we talk about discipleship today, and like this idea of like, oh, it's just learning the basics of what is faith and why does church exist and what do we do, what are the, how to pray and how to study your Bible, and those are important. But in first century Israel, the idea of discipleship was much more involved. So in Matthew 5, okay, that's big enough. It looks small over there. So Matthew 5, this is the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, and so I want to talk about this briefly. He's seeing the crowds. He went up on the mountain, and when he had sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and he taught them. So this was the idea of what discipleship was back then. A disciple was a learner, someone who put themselves under the authority of a rabbi, and they learned. And they had 3 goals. They had 3 goals as they learned under their rabbi. Number 1 was to spend time with their rabbi. The way discipleship worked then, it was 24/7. You left everything and you followed your rabbi. And the way it worked, to be able to follow a rabbi, after you did all your education, and you found a rabbi you wanted to follow, you would say, hey, I want to follow you. And they would say, well, hold on a second. I got to ask you some questions first. And they would grill you over what your knowledge of the Old Testament, over your walk with God. And if they felt like you had the chutzpah, if you had what was required to be their disciple, after they grilled you, they would say something like, follow me. That was the invitation to follow them. And which we know in the Gospels, Jesus often said that to when he was inviting his disciples to follow him. And so this was how most rabbis invited people to follow them. And so they would, and what that meant was not just they'd go take some classes and sit under them, but it was they walked with them, they talked with them, they ate with them, they traveled with them. The rabbis traveled a lot. There's actually a phrase. It's a Jewish blessing that says for people who are disciples who are following a rabbi, it's may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. And it was a blessing that meant, as you're following your rabbi, if you're walking close behind them, and you're in Israel, it's very dirty, very dusty. The idea was that as they walked and as you traveled, if you followed closely with them and walked in step with them, all the dust they kicked up would cover you. And that the blessing was just an admonition to follow them closely. And so that idea that you're with them 24/7, being with them is a key part of this discipleship. So that was number 1. Number 2 was become like your rabbi. As you spend time with them, you become more and more like them. And number 3 was to do as they do. Those are the 3 goals of a disciple in first century Israel. And so The Sorry, I lost my train of thought. One second. I do this all the time. No one knows this. Working with me, we have conversations, and suddenly I forget where I was going. Oh yeah, this is it. So this invitation to follow, to become like your rabbi, and to do as they do, it's like in 21st century America, this idea that we go to school to learn has a lot to do with what we learn intellectually. But when we are a disciple, it's both what we learn intellectually, but also what we do. The idea of being a disciple is a learning plus doing. So, I in this group sometimes over the years I've heard this phrase say, "Well, I'm not as smart as you guys. I don't know as much as you know," and that always bothers me a little bit because there's this idea that people who are spiritual know more, that they're more knowledgeable, they know more doctrine or theology, and that really bothers me because I often think that the people who follow Christ and obey him and do what he says, I think are often far more mature than the people who just know a lot of stuff about God. And so I always try to correct that thought. Whenever that comes up, it's not about how much you know. It's because I think in our educational system, we've taught people to think, you get to a point where you've learned enough, you know enough, you graduate, and that's the whole point. Whereas in God's economy, the whole point is that you become like Christ, and that you follow him and you do the things that he would do. And that doesn't require a whole lot of education. That just requires spending time with Christ. And so when Jesus invited people to follow him, he made it really, really clear that he had some very, very specific requirements of the kinds of things that you would do and life would look like as you're following him. And so the posture of a disciple is one who is learning, the one who is looking at his teacher and taking in the information, but also actively following and doing the same kinds of things, okay? So learning, the importance of learning. This thing doesn't like me. All right. Okay. Hey, there we go. I'm back. So as far as learning is concerned, there are a number of things that you have to do. There's four aspects of learning, and I'm going to focus on one. And I think this is really important. This is what Jesus talks about in this next passage we're going to talk about. And it's basically, the idea is that you need to pay attention. So when you go to school and the kids are all distracted, right? What does the teacher say? Pay attention, eyes up here, right? That's this idea that we need to pay attention. You can't learn unless you're engaged, unless you're paying attention. Here's a good example. So Jackie and I were talking last week. We went to the store together after church, and we picked up a few things. And as we're going along, so as you're going through the store, I'm sure most of you had this experience. You're going through the store, it's busy, you're going with your shopping cart, and you're going down an aisle, and in front of you is someone who's just going so slow, and they're going right down the center of the aisle. Okay, they're coming down the center of the aisle, and they're looking to the side, and they're looking for whatever they're looking for, and they're just going really slow, and they're focused, looking at each one they're in the frozen foods, and they're looking for potatoes. I need frozen potatoes. Oh, here's the potatoes. Oh, there's 1,000 frozen potatoes. Oh my gosh, what? Let's see, there's curly fries, there's regular fries, there's hash browns, there's tater tots. Oh, wait, which one did I want? Oh, I need this. Oh, hold on, let me look at my phone. There's all of this focus. And what happens when a person's focused like that, they literally can't see anything around them. They lose focus of everything else because the way God designed our brain is that we focus and we learn one thing at a time. And we can only focus on so many things at once. So when you're going down the aisle and you see someone walking really slow, the reason is they're thinking about 100 different things, and they're trying to figure out what they need to buy, where it's at, is it on the grocery list or not, what's the price of it. They've got a lot going on, and they literally can't see you. The whole point of that is that for us to be able to learn, we have to give our attention to something. And what we give our attention to, that's what gets in, right? And so right now, you're all paying attention to me, I think. Looks like it. What I say better be something worth listening to. Because if it's not, you're all going to start thinking about lunch and everything else. And so as when Jesus communicated what was required of a disciple, a lot of it had to do with who you're paying attention to. So in Matthew 11, I cherry-picked a couple verses here. And this is the passage that is typically the counting the cost. You know, if you're going to be my disciple, this is what it's going to cost you. And so I picked a handful of these because they actually really apply to paying attention. So verse 28, come to me. No, this is not it. It's the other one. Luke, sorry. Thanks. Appreciate it. Good job. You're paying attention. I'm sorry. We'll get to that one in a minute. Luke 14. Now great crowds had accompanied him, and he turned and he said to them, 26, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and his wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Verse 27, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. And then skip down to 33, any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. So there are three areas that Jesus brings up that says, this is, if you're going to follow me, if you're going to be my disciple, this is what I require. So I'm going to start at the bottom. Verse 33, anyone who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. What he's saying here is all your possessions, everything you have, if it's more important than me, you can't be my disciple. And being his disciple, when he's saying here, he's like if you value your car, if you value your job, your source of income, if you value your stuff more than you value him, you cannot be his disciple. The point here is not that he doesn't say, if you like your stuff more than me, it's going to be really tough to be my disciple. He says you cannot learn from me when you have these distractions. So this is a tough one because I think for me, I've wrestled with this. So I have a job. I make okay money. And for me to think, like, what if God called me? What if God called me to go into the ministry? What if God called me to go serve somewhere else? What if God told me to quit my job and didn't tell me why? As a disciple, if I'm following Christ and I've got a good job that supports my family, that's going to be tough for me. Okay, and I'm just being honest here. I've wrestled with this. Like, how important is my job to me? How important is my ability to have an income and provide for my family? Is it more important than my relationship with God? Is it more important than listening to what he has to say and obeying it? And I have to honestly wrestle with that. Like, if he were to ask me, I need you to stop working, and I want you to go over here and minister to the Navajo, whatever, would I do that? I mean, that's picking up not just myself, but my family, and selling all my stuff, and then picking everybody up and moving to some other place, to some unknown thing that we're going to do. Like, that's a hard thing to reckon with. And the reality is, God could ask you to do that. Does he ask most of us to do that? I don't think so. But part of this is that we have to be ready, that if he were to ask us to drop everything, we would have to hold these possessions loosely. To say that this stuff is just stuff. this world we live in, this house we have, it's not the thing that matters the most. But it's hard because we get really attached. We get attached to our routines. This is my home. But I think the crux of it for me as I think through is, the question I have to ask myself is not what do I own, but what owns me? Does my stuff own me or not? And so I think that's a hard thing to wrestle with. Verse 26, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother, his wife, his children, even his own life. Possessions is one thing. To really wrestle with what the stuff we have is one thing. But to wrestle with the relationships we have in our lives. Again, God says, I want your full attention. I want you to focus on me and see me, because you're going to learn from me. The only way you're going to learn from me is if you're looking at me. And if there's possessions in the way, you're not going to be able to learn from me. If there's people and relationships in the way, you're not going to be able to learn from me. If you're listening to your spouse or your children more than you're listening to God, that's a conflict that you got to reconcile between you and him. He cannot teach you if you're not focused on him. And so a good example of this is like helicopter parents. You think you're being a really good parent. You're watching your kid. You're involved in all their sports and in all the classes. You're talking to every teacher. You are in every aspect of their life. And so you think that you're loving your child by smothering them. But in actuality, you're not allowing them to learn and grow the way that they were designed to grow, which is by trial and error and testing things. Yes, we need to protect our children, but there's also this aspect of letting them develop their own sensibilities of how to function in the world. And like when I was a kid, I got to ride my bike around the neighborhood, and I learned how not to get hit by a car. We don't do that anymore because, that's kind of dumb, but it worked. I'm still here, so. But this idea that you have relationships in your life, they cannot come between you and God. Your relationship with God has to be so important to you. It has to be the priority that every other relationship is a distant second. Not that you hate your family, but that your love for God outshines your love for anybody else. That your love for everyone else is such a distant second. It could look like hate as compared to your love for God. That's what he's looking for, is that level of attention. Verse 27 is the toughest one, I think. It says, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. And so I think possessions is something we can kind of square with. I think people, the relationships, we can kind of square with a little bit. It's tough, but pain, that's a different thing. Especially, bearing your own cross, this idea that if I follow Christ, I might get spit on, I might get mocked, I might get persecuted, I might not be liked. People may talk about me behind my back and slander me. If I'm truly living out my faith, people might have a problem with that and may not treat me very well. But Christ says, pick it up, pick up the cross. This is the cross. People are going to reject you. You're going to have to be okay with that. And if that's a problem for you, if you're going to follow me, you got to pick it up. You got to pick up the cross. And it's going to cause you pain. To follow Christ is going to cause pain. But the other pain that we got to pick up and deal with is pain. Sometimes we call it baggage, pain from the past. So there are things that happen that are not just, where a child is abused. A spouse cheats on their spouse. People steal from each other. When you're the recipient of an injustice, and you sit there and you go, God, what were you thinking? Why would you let this happen? I don't understand. I'm frustrated. I'm hurt. I don't trust you, God, because you let this thing happen. It's deep pain that some people have. And what Christ is saying here is like, look, whether you experience pain because you follow me, or you experience pain because there's sin in the world and I allowed it, you got to pick up that cross and follow me. Because if you let that pain get between you and Christ, you're not going to be able to follow him. You're not going to be able to hear him and learn from him. He said you got to pick up the pain. Recognize that he allowed it in your life. Take it and follow him anyway. I mean, that's like that song we were singing a little bit ago. Blessed be your name. On the road marked with suffering, though there's pain in the offering, blessed be your name. When the darkness closes in, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Like with Job, the ability to say that even though there's pain, I'm still going to pick up my cross. I'm still going to give God the glory that he deserves. Not because my circumstances are so great or so horrible, but just because he deserves it. To be a disciple, to give God the attention that he deserves, you need to get the possessions out of the way. You need to get the relationships out of the way. You need to get the pain out of the way. All of that stuff gets in the way of you being able to hear him and see him and follow him. And those are hard things. I mean, when Jesus said this stuff, it was hard stuff. The people around him, this is why he said he saw great crowds. He was like, all right, a lot of people are following me. They love to eat the food. They love to hear the teaching. But who's really with me? Because this is what it's going to look like. If you're going to follow me, it's going to be hard. So, you can't pay attention to God when you have distractions. And so I think we all have a responsibility and a difficulty of wrestling with that. At the same time, I don't want to make you feel obligated that you've got to have it all together right this second. Because Andy has said this before, sometimes there are broken things in our hearts that need to be fixed. And God doesn't fix all of it all at once. He works on one thing, lets us heal from that, works on the next thing. There's a timing and a pace. And so we can say, I got these things I got to deal with in my own heart, my own mind. And I'm sure some of you are thinking right now, some of these things are triggering a thought, right? There's something in you that's like, you know what? Yeah, I have an issue with my stuff. I have an issue with a relationship that's getting in the way of my relationship with Christ. I have an issue with some pain. I have some deep hurt that I can't let go of. And it's a barrier, but I want to take care of that. I want to deal with that. And you can, and you will, right? And the cool part about it, and I think this is the next slide, Matthew 11, is this, that, you know, Jesus understands. He understands that it doesn't all happen at once. That our walk is a walk. When a disciple followed a rabbi, it was over a long period of time, and they, just look at Peter. Dude made a lot of mistakes. Talk about foot and mouth disease. I mean, that guy, he said a lot of things, but he followed Christ, and he kept following. And he became the man, the leader that Christ expected him to be. And so, the thing I love about this little passage here, come to me all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. Learn. This is what we're supposed to do as disciples, right? For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I mean, anybody who's been in church for any time, we all know this, right? But I love that he makes this really heavy statement about what it looks like to be a disciple. Set your possessions, your relationships, your pain, the cross you take up, set it all aside because you're following him. But at the same time, he says, it's really simple. You just follow me. And if you follow me and you keep your eyes on me, I will set things right in your heart. I will set things right in your heart so that you know how to love the people in your life, and you know how to be a good steward of your possessions. You know how to manage the pain or the conflicts in your life. If you follow him. But it doesn't happen overnight. It is a process. It's a long process. And this part here, you will find rest for your souls. For me, that is, it almost makes me cry every time I read it, because I'm tired. And I think a lot of people are really tired because we have things like these dumb phones that scream at us and make us feel anxious when they're not around. That's a problem. I agree. And we have all these inputs, all of this stuff coming at us, and it's just exhausting. And then the pace of work and taking care of your family and Christ says, if you follow him, you keep your attention on him, he will set your priorities. And guess what you'll find? Rest. And you will find rest for yourself. In the Greek, what that says is he will give you permission to rest. For people like myself who just go, I feel obligated to keep going. I feel obligated to contribute in church. I feel obligated at work. I am a mess of obligation. And so when I go to Christ and I pray about all of this weight I'm carrying, and he says, oh, no, I didn't make you do all that. Yeah, you took that on yourself. Do this. And I'm given permission to rest. I need that. I don't know about you, but when I talk to Jesus and I get a sense that there's moments of push where it's going to be crazy busy, and there's going to be moments of rest. And he gives that when I need it. It's just a trust. I have to trust him for that. But you're never going to find the rest for your soul. You're never going to find that relationship if you've got all this other stuff in the way. So the possessions, the relationships you have, the pain, at some point you got to deal with it. And Christ does over time. So, for me, when I think about discipleship, my brain goes to, okay, well, I got to read my Bible, I got to pray, I got to go to men's group, I got to go to church, as long as I'm playing piano, I'm involved in these things, I got to witness to people. I have this checklist that I'm trying to check every week. I'm doing all these things. And as I have reflected that, especially over the last 6 months to a year, I've realized I've created a religion for myself that isn't what Jesus has been telling me. I've created a checklist of stuff I'm supposed to do every day. And I'm really, really working on what does it look like to really follow Christ. Because by the way I'm living, it looks a lot more like a Pharisee and the whole laundry list of rules I'm trying to follow. And that's exhausting. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I will give you permission to rest. Church can be exhausting. Work can be exhausting. But if we follow Christ in what he really wants us to do, and we take the time to listen, to get the other stuff out of the way, to get rid of the obligation, I think there's a beautiful place that we can land in our relationship with him where we're walking in the Spirit, and it's the Spirit walking through us and not us just trudging along, making it happen. It's exhausting. I'm tired of it. And so for me, and I would encourage you, to spend time with God, just to really say, God, what do you really want me to do? Do you really want me doing the checklists? Or do you want me to just be with you so I can become like you and I can do the things you want me to do? I want to be covered in the dust of my rabbi. And the last time I checked, he wasn't a Pharisee. He did things a lot different. And maybe as the church, we can do things a lot different if we're following our rabbi. So I'll leave you with this last thought. It'll be my blessing to you. May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi as you follow Jesus. I'm going to pray real quick, and then we'll dismiss. Heavenly Father, thank you for sending Jesus to earth, obscurity for 30 years, and then to be a rabbi for 3, and to die for our sins, and to rise from the dead, and to be our king. Lord, I thank you that he was an example. He was an example of what it means to be meek and lowly in heart, and that's okay. We don't have to be the hero. We don't have to save everybody else, Lord. You just gave us what we need to do individually, and Lord, help us to live in the will that you have for us, not in the will that everyone else expects. Help us to follow you and to put you in your proper place where you belong and everything else where it belongs, Lord. Help us to find freedom and rest in you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for being here this week. Appreciate you guys. You're dismissed.